Hi there, and welcome along to episode 4 of season 2 of the Gardener Ben podcast. It's been once again a busy end to February in the garden, with me pressing on with preparations to clear the winter garden and start planting out last year's roses. I'm also going to be pressing on now we're into the very beginning of March with some sowing of some more seeds under glass. I'm not only going to be sowing a couple of batches of peas, but also some tomatoes as well, placing them on a heat mat under a tight-fitting cloche just to give them a little bit of heat and start them moving along. Outside in the vegetable and cutting garden, it's time to start thinking about sowing some beetroot and some carrots. Now, I'm plagued with a load of birds in the garden here and a huge amount of squirrel activity, so I have to be mindful of what I do with these. So I'm going to be sowing these into shallow drills on well-prepared soil and then covering them up with large plastic cloches just to keep the birds and the squirrels off of them until they have a chance to germinate. The end of February was bitterly cold, so I'm going to proceed with caution as we move into the month of March, just in case the weather's still got a little bit of a nip in its tail. Finally, I have finished clearing the borders and all the roses are pruned, including one or two really large climbers and ramblers that I've been putting off to the very end because I really couldn't face it. I spent absolutely ages a few days ago pruning and training a Claire Austin that I grow as a climber on an obelisk here. Unfortunately, it's collapsed in the winter winds just before Christmas and has been laid looking rather undignified on the floor for quite some time. Knowing full well it was not going to be a particularly nice task, I've been putting it off for ages, and it feels really, really good to finally get that task done and her back upright and trained onto her newly constructed obelisk. I've also, very stupidly, added yet another 10 roses to my personal review list for 2025, meaning that this year I'm going to be bringing you nearly 50 rose reviews, 50 sets of stills and 50 new opinions on 50 different varieties. So do look out for loads and loads of content coming from me in June, July, August and into September. My guest today on episode 4 is the wonderful Katryn, who uses one of the best Instagram handles that I've ever come across. Head across to Instagram and give her account a follow. Look for Rake Expectations. Katryn is a gardener and blogger from Fife in Scotland, who shares on her account her gardening journey and how the weather and growing conditions up in Scotland affect what she can and what she can't grow, and how she gets around these issues. She is also responsible for sending us one of the sweetest gifts we have ever received from someone on Instagram, a little hand-painted picture of the cottage here at North Lodge, which we received some time ago. And I have to confess, I didn't really quite know what to do with it, and we didn't have any money at the time when it arrived, so it went into a book to keep it safe and flat out of harm's way. And I finally had it framed at the very beginning of this year. That little watercolour sent from Katryn really brings us great pleasure. So I'll let Katryn introduce herself to you and tell her all about what she gets up to. Today, I have the pleasure in speaking to someone from Instagram called Katryn, who has one of the best usernames I absolutely adore. Katryn goes by the handle on Instagram of Rake Expectations, which I absolutely love. Hello, Katryn. Welcome along.
Hi there, Ben. It's nice to talk to you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I have been following Katryn for a huge amount of time, and Katryn has become very special to me on Instagram. She's one of the few people I really interact with on a regular basis, and an account that I absolutely adore. Katryn, do you want to take a couple of moments just to introduce yourself to people that may not be following along on Instagram, may not have got involved with any of the projects you share or your blog? Tell everybody what it is that you do and where it is that you're gardening.
No worries. Ben said, my name's Karen, and I garden in rural Fife in Scotland. We live in a really nice part of the world, nice countryside, very windy, but really enjoy it. Mostly I use my Rake Expectations account just to share like little pictures, little tidbits about what I'm doing, a little slice of life here in Scotland. I also write a couple of blogs. I have a WordPress one of the same name, and I have one on Substack, which is Moss and Magic, which is a little bit different to my usual writing. So yeah, it's not strictly gardening. Sometimes it's a little bit random. It's a lot like myself, but it's just little bits here and there of what I'm doing, and just the differences of gardening here in Scotland, particularly where we are very exposed. We're right on the edge of the fields. the wind whips right through, and it's like a wind tunnel. So it's kind of a unique situation. We have a kind of unusual garden. We're a detached house, and we have garden on each side, so it's like four separate gardens
Hmm.
facing four different directions. So
I
it's
think
good to have kind of
that's
mini
one of the nicest
climate
things
sort of
about
thing.
North Lodge is that we sit literally right in the middle of our plot as well, and it is a really, really lovely way of being completely immersed in the garden. As you say, with the garden on all four sides and all four aspects, each one of them has a slightly different appeal and a slightly different sort of aspect, and the sun gets in them to this differently. So I didn't know your house sat in the middle and you were had a wraparound garden. So that's really nice to know.
Yeah, it's quite an unusual kind of layout because we have like the front. I never know what to call our gardens. They've all got kind of crackers names because our front garden isn't really at the front of our house; it's at the side.
Hmm.
Our front door is on the side, and it's I never know whether to say the front garden, the back garden, the side garden. So we've kind of had to come up with like nicknames. So we call it we had like the rose garden because it's mainly got roses. Then we
Yeah.
have the courtyard garden because it's kind of all walled. It's got an old stone wall and it's mostly like stones and planters. Then we have it used to be called the herb garden, but we're trialing new names for that one because we've kind of moved away from having more herbs there. So it's kind of up to the air. Usually we'll say the greenhouse garden. And then we've got, I like to say the woodland garden, but it's really only got one tree. It's an absolutely gigantic old fir tree, but it sounds really grand, but it's, really just to give an idea of woodland planting. But it does make me giggle sometimes. We'll say I'm in the woodland section with my whole one tree.
Yeah. Does it cast an awful lot of shade? You say it's a big evergreen, but does it cast a lot of shade? Is that why you're growing woodland plants in that particular area?
Yeah, it does. It really doesn't get an awful a lot of light. It gets a little bit certain times of the day, but it is very sort of dappled and kind of occluded. So there's not a lot of light getting through. So it's mainly kind of like ferns and cyclamen and just things that you'd find naturally in a woodland. I quite like things that to look like a natural landscape. And
Hmm.
I made changes to the garden after I had been quite poorly with COVID and took an awful long time to recover. And when I couldn't walk very far, I used to love woodland walks and hill walks and all that kind of stuff and couldn't really do it anymore. So I sort of started to make areas in the garden to kind of mimic the walks I used to enjoy. So the sort of heather and grasses, like as you're going up the hillside, through the forest, and tried to kind of like give myself a little slice of what I would enjoy. But in the garden, that's kind of when that took shape.
Your own little oasis.
Yeah,
Very
has
nice
to
too.
be.
I have to ask. I've followed your Instagram account for a very long time, and we've obviously interacted on hundreds of different occasions.
Yeah.
But during today's research stage, I found something at the top of your profile that really resonates with me, and I don't know if you actually know, but you have a song pinned to the top of your profile. Why is "Don't Stop Me Now" by Queen posted to the top of your profile?
Oh, yes. Do you know, this is going to sound really morbid, but it was actually thinking about funeral music. We went to a funeral once, a family member, and we
Okay,
couldn't think what to have.
I was not expecting that whatsoever. Okay, that was a bit of a
That's
curveball.
honestly what it is. And when my granddad passed, they wanted to choose a song that's actually very upbeat, and I was like, I don't know if that's super appropriate. And I thought, well, what is? And I thought, I love that song. Don't stop me now
Well,
because I am having a good time.
I love that song as well, and I'll tell you for why anyway. So did you use that for your grandfather's funeral?
No, the people just didn't seem to think it was appropriate.
Oh,
So we went with other things.
bar humbug
It
to
came,
them.
yeah, it kind of came up in a sort of a discussion, and they, were trying to decide, and that was one of my kind of off the cuff sort of like lightening the mood type suggestions. But
Yeah.
I just love it because I think that's how you should really live your life. Just full pelt, just do what you want to do. Be happy, screaming at the top of your lungs, singing, and lots of joy. So I just
Well,
yeah, it kind of
it
sums up who
certainly
I
made
was
me
wanting to
smile
be.
tonight when I found it there because I didn't know you could actually pin songs to the top of your profile anyway. So
Yeah.
I've learned something today. But I don't know if you know, but I stepped away from my horticultural career for a little while, about 20 years ago, I actually opened a sandwich shop. I've had several careers, mostly horticulture and gardening. I've made my career from that mostly in my life, but I did sell cars for a while. And after I sold cars for a while, I also opened a sandwich shop. And it was called, we bought a business that was dormant. It actually been closed down, but the fixtures and fittings and the name were all there. And we actually purchased a sort of a dormant company, and it was called Fahrenheit 420. And for about 3.5 years running that particular sandwich shop, I was known as the sandwich shop man. And my ringtone was "Don't Stop Me Now," because it mentions in there speeding at the bullet of light, and
Yeah.
obviously mentions of Fahrenheit and what have you, and temperature. And literally, that was my ringtone for such a long time. And I used to have such a good time with this is in a day when you used to sort of download a ringtone. And I mean, you obviously
Yeah.
remember that time of
Back in
life.
the
You
day, yeah.
you used to pay like 32p for one or whatever it was, and it was a crazy flog.
Yeah.
But I downloaded this, and it was my ringtone for, say, about 3 years. And I used to dance and sing around to it for so long that I actually used to forget to answer the phone and have to phone everybody
Yeah.
back. So yeah, when I
I
found it pinned to the top of your profile today, it did make me chuckle.
I just love it. I know all the words. My ringtone used to be the theme from the A-Team, but the full, like, orchestral, like, sort of 4 minute long type shenanigans. And I remember being at a hospital appointment years ago. You're not supposed to have your phone on, and it would not stop. And everyone's just trying to pretend like not to hear it and not to hear do, 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 the whole thing.
Again, isn't it bizarre how the world has changed? We now all put our phones onto silent, and I have
I
to
don't no noise. Yeah.
literally they drive me insane. It makes me on
Oh,
edge.
naughty.
And then, of course, then when people do actually ring you and they need to get hold of you, your phone's on silent. So I've only just worked out that with my iPhone, I can actually place certain telephone numbers onto alerts. So if, for instance, if Mark phones me or my mum phones me or my dad phones me, they actually ring and they're not on silent and completely muted. So I don't miss phone calls all the time. Otherwise, I get
Yeah.
so much grief from my mum. She said, "You never put your phone down, but whenever I phone, you never answer it." So I'm sorry.
Oh, notifications though.
Yeah, quite. So tell me a little bit about why you actually garden. Is there actually a reason why you have an interest in horticulture and you garden at home, or is it just something that you've always done?
I've kind of been brought up with gardening. My granddad was a phenomenal gardener, really phenomenal. And he built his own greenhouse out of like old windows that he'd kind of sort of scavenged from people's projects and things. And I just always really loved to go out to his greenhouse and watch him plant. And it seemed so therapeutic, and just the smell of it all, and just being in there with him chatting. And I've always just liked it. I like flowers, and I just like the smell of things, like things to smell nice and to look nice and coloured and just to be outdoors. And when I first moved out home, I bought a flat when I was 18, and it had a tiny, tiny little balcony, and I had this one pot, and that was my piece of outdoor space. It was this like one point, this tiny little miniature garden. And it just, from there, it was just kind of ignited more of a passion, and finding out the plant names and a bit of history, and a bit more about it. But I just like to dig and to get into the soil. That's one of my other passions, is archaeological volunteering. I just like to get in there with the soil, and getting involved in the fresh air. And it's just, I think it's really good for your mental health. I think it's
And
good for your
quite literally
physical
ground
health
yourself.
too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this whole busy world going on around us, it's just a piece of quiet and sort of the chaos.
Lovely. I mean, the more people I talk to, it's obviously this. I've done several of these interviews. Obviously, getting season one out the way and racking up several episodes already under my belt with season two that have yet to be published. But it's really interesting to hear that there are so many stories like yours of a grandparent or a parent, or like with me, it was I mean, my grandparent, my mum's dad was a keen gardener. I did some work out in the garden with him, but realistically, it was an older member of a generation. My next door neighbour was the person that really got me into gardening. I have the most, and I've told this story before to other people, they'll probably get bored of it, but I do have the most wonderful memories of Roger, my mum and dad's next door neighbour at the house I grew up in. We had little 3 foot fences dividing the gardens, and Roger was a cigar smoker. So when he was out in the garden,
Mm.
he smoked Hamlet cigars. So when he was out in the garden, you could often smell him before you could hear him or knew he
Yeah,
was out there.
quite
And I used to
distinctive.
sort of smell the cigar smoke, and I would purposely walk down the garden to the point where the fence was, and I'd say hello. And I was only about 6 or 7, and I used to hop over the fence, and I would disappear for hours. And I was with Roger for whole sort of afternoons on a Saturday or a Sunday when I was, and he taught me to prune fruit trees. He taught me to prune red currants and black currants, and he had a greenhouse and he had an old cylinder lawnmower that he would help me, I would help him tinker with and sharpen the blades and oil, and then we would have bonfires and he would make milky cups of tea. And that for me was just,
Oh, that's
those are the
lovely.
memories that I carry with me from my childhood. I'm not saying I have lovely memories of everything from my childhood, I really did, but those were the memories that sparked me and got me really into gardening. And that was as young as 5 or 6 years old. And it just doesn't, it never ceases to amaze me that actually if you feed the young people's imaginations, and I know we live in a very different world now that that screens occupy pretty much all of our time, but actually if you have a young person in your life that has any interest in being outside, whether it's pond dipping or whether it's growing seeds or whether it's collecting leaves or whatever it is, that actually if you just encourage that little spark, it will turn into a fire that will last for a lifetime. And often, like me, you can make a complete career out of it. I mean, yeah, it's lovely to hear.
That's so true. Yeah. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, I think it's really important just to try and get them out. Our local school's quite good to kind of get them out outdoor learning and
Hmm.
getting them out to kind of experience that. But I definitely think more could be done. I think to get youngsters out there and involved. Hopefully, that's like starting to change
Well,
now.
yeah, actually,
Hopefully.
it's an interesting point. I mean, obviously, I don't have children. You have children of a school age. Are those kind of school classes and after school clubs still happening? Because when I was a child, there was lots of that kind of activity, and we called it environmental club. And there was, I don't know, about a dozen of us that would attend twice a week after school, and we would do litter picking, and we would plant up a border, or we would plant some bulbs, or we did all sorts of bits. But does that kind of thing still happen in schools? Obviously, I'm a little bit detached from it.
It's more. It tends to be more primary school level. Like at
Hmm.
high school, there's really not much in the terms of like the sort of horticulture or like really growing or doing anything like that. There is sometimes some of like the support classes, for kids that maybe need to get out of like traditional school. They do
Yeah.
kind of outdoorsy stuff, but it's not really like horticulture and growing. But I don't know if that's because our high school is in quite a big town. Our kids bus in because our primary school is tiny. I think there's only currently 28 kids there, the whole
Yeah.
school. So we have to bus to like the big smoke to go to high school. So maybe it's different if your high school is a bit more rural.
Yeah. Oh, I suppose I'll just have to do some research into that because I say I was a child that really suffered in the classroom. Although I'm incredibly intelligent with different with dyslexia really held me back and nobody really understood it in the days I came through school, and I really did struggle sitting still. It turns out there are other reasons why I can't sit still, but we won't go into that now. But yeah, I really loved those classes, and especially after school there was a club, and those immersed me. So I'm a bit miffed that those things don't exist anymore. So maybe I'll have to. That may be the next thing for me. I might have to throw myself into something like that.
That sounds like a good idea.
You mentioned earlier that
Sorry,
you
I've got
you've
a croaky throat.
sorry.
I've got a croaky throat. It keeps kind of going a little bit hoarse.
You mentioned earlier you'd stopped growing herbs. Is that because the growing conditions up where you're now living are too harsh for herbs, or you've changed interests?
Well, I've kind of changed the type of herbs that I grow. Where we started when we first moved here, for some reason, the sort of strip up the side of the hedge, nothing really grew. It was on the other side of like a little wall next to the hedge. It wasn't the hedge; it was the problem. Things just wouldn't grow, and we were kind of like, what can we put in to just fill a gap? And I got, I love the death shelf bargains. I got some reduced herbs that were needing a bit of TLC, and I just chucked them in there. Usual kind of sage, sort of usual kind of culinary herbs.
Hmm.
But they've kind of been a bit too successful, and they're massive now. So we're literally tripping over them to try and get
Well, you're
past
obviously
their
you're
absolute
obviously
huge.
you're obviously not using enough sage, and you're obviously not using enough rosemary. So
It's so much, honestly. I'll send you a picture later. It's absolutely massive. So we decided to kind of like take those out and put something different in there. But I've actually have so we call it the witchy patch. I have a lot of like sort of pagan type herbs that I grow now. So it's not. I do still grow culinary herbs, but it's more ones for herbal teas or
Mhm.
ones to kind of burn and incense and things like that. So it's just kind of it's in a
Lovely.
different area because I do
Yeah.
quite like to compartmentalise. I do have some things mixed through. I have separate bits where I go and like, the dog's not allowed in that section because there's some sort of poisonous type things, and he eats everything, as we've talked about before, eats everything, so he's not allowed in there.
But we're going to have to introduce the listeners to Trevor, aren't we? Trevor is your is Cocker Spaniel?
He is, yeah, he's a
Yeah,
blue
and
roan
how
cocker
old is he now?
spaniel. He's 8 months now.
Okay, so he's got a lot of growing up to do just yet. So we can forgive him for being a little bit boisterous and being a little bit
Yeah,
eating and digging things up.
very keen. He's very keen on the pruning and the whole,
I
taking
was
plants out and eating. That's awesome.
I was I was brought up with a Cocker Spaniel. That was our family dog as a child. And Sophie, our Cocker Spaniel, was again. Trevor is. Would you describe him as a blue roam, or is he? Would you call him white and black?
He's a blue roan, yeah. He's
Okay,
quite
because
silvery almost. He does have black and white, but he's more silver.
yeah. Sophie, the Cocker Spaniel I grew up with, was definitely black and white, and she ruled our house. There's no way of her
Oh,
saying
there's
it,
his
but she
personality.
literally ruled the environment. She owned my mum. She ate everything she wanted to eat, including boxes of eggs, sunglasses, dead frogs, whole candles. Yeah.
Yeah, absolute dustbins. It's terrible. And then he'll be a little unwell because he's ate something random in the garden, and you're like, well, will nobody be
What did,
Jeff? You're eating the
yeah,
moss and the
yeah.
fruit in the garden.
Doesn't learn. No, just goes straight back to it afterwards after being sick. Yeah, Sophie was exactly the same. I remember, yeah, she ate a whole box of half a dozen raw eggs, including the box and the shells, and then spent the evening sort of convulsing and being sick. And yeah, not fun.
Oh no, no, it's not at all. But
Again,
yeah, so
that
just
was the 90s. It's a
yeah,
very,
it was
very
different
different.
back then. You could feed them what you had and bits and bobs, and there was none of
Just
this.
used
This
to
is
st
chocolate for dogs. They can't have that. It was just whatever you had chopped
just
up
used
from
to
that very
steal
day.
just used to steal everything, literally. I mean, one of those dogs, I mean, you see on the internet, I mean, we used literally had to push everything to the back of the worktops, because even, I mean, she was only a normal sized Cocker Spaniel, so she couldn't have been more than about 12 or 15 inches at the shoulder, but she would get up onto the side in the kitchen. I remember one Christmas she ate an entire sort of 2 or 3 pints of cream celeriac. Um,
Oh no!
and she'd eaten a lot before anybody, we heard the noise from the lounge, and by the time we got
Before
to
you
the
even
kitchen, the
blinked.
whole entire bowl was gone. I mean, it's yeah. Some of those little
Trevor,
recipes.
he loves homemade sourdough.
Does
He's
he?
very keen on sourdough toast. You see him, the wee paw comes up, and he kind of like come here sort of action, and he flicks the plate closer, 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 and then the toast is gone.
Oh, lovely. Gotta love him. So,
He's a nice
going back
boy.
to gardening, what you've got a little greenhouse. I know you've got a little greenhouse. So, what are you growing just at the
Yeah.
moment? Talk me through your setup?
Oh, it's terrible. It's full. Oh, I wouldn't know where to start. I've got a bunch of bare root plants because I've got two new borders that I've kind of like extended by probably about 4 times the size. So I have a lot of bare roots just now. I know it's better to put them straight in, but I just can't because they're not ready.
So
So I've got a lot of
you
them
got
in
them into
here.
soak, or you've potted them up?
I had to pot them up because they were like off and like going, so they needed to go somewhere. So I've got a lot
Hmm.
of like oat milk cartons like lined up. So I've got them all in there. I'm also doing a pallet garden at Scone Palace Garden Fair again this year. So
Amazing.
I've got
Yeah.
a lot of plants potted up in there because I need them to be in flower and look better earlier because it's quite sharp this year. It's the week after Chelsea usually, so it's like end of May.
Hmm.
So I've got a lot of stuff in there potted up. So like grasses and not to give too much away about my theme, but I've got
No, no,
some
not
sea pinks and some bits and bobs and some
so.
things that I ordered
So
online. I didn't label them, so God only knows.
you're having to force things a little bit, because I'm assuming your season up in Fife is really only just getting started, come sort of mid to late May.
Yes, there's not an awful lot going. I think that's the big challenge for this garden fair is that it's still quite green and not much colour. There's not a lot in flower. Even things that would normally be for like yourselves down south, they wouldn't be here. And it's a bit. You want it to be representative, but then you also want to have colour in your garden, and you want people to for there to be interest and things like that. So a lot of stuff will go in the greenhouse. It is heated, so it keeps things kind of going a little bit, and it's quite a small greenhouse. It's bolted onto the garage wall, so it gets quite warm. So it's quite good for bringing things on a little
Yeah.
bit quicker. But it's absolutely full to the guttles. And I just got another plant delivery the other day, and I'm at the point now where I'm just like, I don't know where it's going to go. I really don't know. I've taken over the dining room.
Well, there sounds like a true garden. I mean, everybody says, well, "What are you going to do with that?" Absolutely no idea where I'm going to put it. No
Oh, I
idea what I'm going
told
to do
you.
with it. I just want it.
Just want it and I'm going to have it. Yeah, I sometimes have these ideas when I've had a little glass of wine on Saturday night, and then I always look at my Amazon basket or my search history and like, what did drunk Karen think that she needed? And one day it was peacocks. I'd been searching up how do you house peacocks? How much
God,
space do you need
you
to
don't
have
house them. They
peacocks?
stay outside, don't they? They go
They
up into
do, but I
trees to
think you need
roost.
more space than we've got.
Well, can you? Did you
But
listen
yeah,
to? Did you listen to the episode with the Whiteside Boys from Scotland
I did.
on the
Yeah,
pod?
yeah. Just
They've
the
got
other
they've
day,
got
they've
peacocks. They've
got
got
peacocks, don't
beautiful
they?
peacocks. Yeah.
Oh, I just love them. The Spoon Palace has got them kind of free roaming up there, and I just love them. But I became convinced, yeah, one Saturday night that I needed to have peacocks in the garden. So it could be worse, but it's probably the most bonkers idea I've had.
Apparently, they're very very noisy. They do like to squawk and to
They
screech.
are
So yeah. One
really,
of the
really
best.
loud.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, one of the plus points of to keep people away. But yeah, I've had the pleasure of meeting one of the David Austin over up at Shropshire. They've only got two peacocks left now, and I had the pleasure of finally meeting one of those a couple of weeks ago when I was up there. I've seen loads of pictures of them before, but never come face to face with them. And I came out of the gentleman's toilets in the nursery there, and it's like, oh, okay, there's a peacock. So I did manage to get some pictures of him before he scurried off somewhere.
Oh, they're so lovely. I just love them. I think they're really, really beautiful. But yeah, I think weekend wine Karen's got a lot to answer for. Like, what did I decide I was doing? I've got a small garden, like I said before. I don't have a huge amount of space, but I decided that I was going to grow a heritage, like old variety of barley called Bear.
Hmm.
So I don't know where this is actually going in the garden. This is my new project that I'm quite keen on because it's mainly grown on Orkney and sort of the small crofts on islands like Barra, which we'd love to visit. But again, from an archaeology perspective, they have found it at like Iron Age sites. So it's one
Yeah.
of our oldest like cereal crops. So we're going to try that this year and see how that goes.
And
But yeah, we're
can
going
I
to give
can
it
I can
a
I
try.
ask, is there an end result with this? Is what are you planning to do with it if it's successful?
Well, I have malted my own barley before to make bread. I have a crazy convoluted bread recipe I found in a great book once for this really nice bread. And you malt your own barley and then you use like cider, and it's such a nice bread. Big fast, big performance into making it. So I might see if
Takes
I
you
can
seven
grow
weeks
enough
to make,
to.
but it's tasty.
Yeah, really good, really worth it. But so I think I'll do that. But it's more to try and just I'm trying to think what the word is. Sorry, sometimes my memory escapes me. It's like a conservation variety, and they're trying to encourage people to even grow a small amount just to keep like the continuity and
Oh
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
know have it like. So I'm quite into that. These like varieties that are not widely grown or plants that might die out or they're a bit more unusual. I do like a quirky plant, so that was another one of my uh, my wine influenced ideas. So I don't know where it's going, but it's going somewhere, and
Well,
I'll keep you posted on how we
I
get
had a
on.
I had a similar idea in our last garden before we moved to this house. We've been here 8 years now, and before we moved here, we did open the garden over at Dynamite Cottage, our last cottage, to the public as well. And I had created quite large borders, which I normally fill in with far too many plants. But before this particular opening, I thought, well, I've run out of kind of money. I can't really afford to put any more plants in them. But I don't know if you remember, we used to keep geese. And geese
Yeah.
absolutely really love barley and they love wheat. They love as a grain. You suspend it in water and they eat it out of buckets of water. And I had this idea. And I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole patch of cornflowers. So I bought a couple of packets of cornflowers and I'm going to sow it with barley because obviously the ears are particularly
Yeah.
attractive. And I actually sowed this area. It was absolutely beautiful. It was one of the talking points of the garden. So, and then I kind of made little bunches and little dollies out of it afterwards. I kind of plaited it together. It was actually really enjoyable. So it's nice
Oh,
that
that's
you've already got
lovely.
an idea of what you might do with it once you've grown it.
Yeah, I think it'll just be something interesting too. I've always got quite a busy brain, and I do like a project, like something to sort of think ahead about. I think it's quite soothing to kind of have something ongoing that you're planning for that's a little bit more long term.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping it works. So we'll see. We'll cross our fingers, and if all else fails, maybe I can just try to make my own whiskey.
So, what is one of what's your favourite thing to grow in the garden? I've got a standard question I ask everybody that comes onto the podcast, and I want to know what your favourite plant is before I ask the second question. So, what's your favourite thing to grow? What do you find the most rewarding plant to grow?
Oh, that's so tough because there's things I grow for different reasons. But a plant I always come back to are geraniums because
Hmm.
they just give and give and give. They grow the whole year. I quite like colour, and they're always in flower. But lately, I've been growing a lot of calendula to make like a nice face oil out of it, and they've
Yeah,
just been the absolute like stars of the year. I think I've never been without a calendula flower the entire year, and
yeah,
we had some
they'll
really really
flower all the
cold
way through the
snaps.
depths of the winter. Yeah.
Yeah, like a real kind of like piece of sunshine and like what can be a quite bleak landscape when you're in that kind of brown sticks winter period. So I would probably say them, but I would also say I could never have a garden without sweet peas. It's the smell, and my granddad grew them and I love them, but they are just a bit of a pest. So
Yeah.
I think I might have to just rebuy plants this year because they've kind of not been getting the care that they need because of having the puppy and being busy. So I think we'll just maybe shelve them and I'll be like, here's one I made earlier. And, I'll maybe just buy some.
Well, as you know, I'm a huge sweet pea grower. I always completely and utterly over commit to sweet peas. I think this year I'm growing 10 varieties. I was very good. I thought I was being very
Oh,
disciplined. I thought I'm only going to
lovely.
buy packets of 10 because the supplier I buy them from, Somerset Sweet Peas, does small packets so that you can buy them in packs of 10. I thought, well, I'll only buy 10 packets of 10. Well, I've
Yeah,
still got like
self
90
limiting.
or 80 or 90 sweet peas plants now. And then, well, where the hell am I going to put them all? And then, of
That's
course,
what.
it's not the fact is not where I'm going to put them. I have probably the space to put them. It's then what do you do with them all? Because they'll each produce, I
Yeah,
mean,
armfuls of flowers.
yeah, and in the first couple of weeks, you're out in the garden at 5 a.m. thinking, "Oh, look at me, I'm all smug. I'm picking my sweet
Yeah,
peas. These are lovely."
lovely wee vase of flowers.
And then 6 weeks later, you're thinking, "Oh my God, no! I wish these would just stop." And then
No
you think, "Well, I can't.
vases.
If I stop picking them, they'll stop flowering. I can't do that. That's just wrong." So I keep picking them. I keep giving them to people. My mum says, "No, I don't want any more of them." Neighbours are sort of closing the doors and rolling down their blinds when they see me crossing the street with them. So yeah, it's
Oh no, what a nice problem to have though, I think. But what variety, not variety, that's right, that was the right word. What kinds are you going for this year? Because I think I was lucky I won some sunset ones from you one year. I've got them in
Sunset
this year and I've
ripples,
also
yeah,
got
and Wiltshire
Jimmy.
ripples. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
and I've got Jimmy Shan because he's local. Well, he was local to us, a Scottish musician.
really. Well, I'm growing Jimmy Shan actually this year.
Yeah, my gran loved his music. He was, I don't think he was born there, but he grew up in the same village as my dad did. So it's off from our state, it's just along the road, I believe he grew up, or one of the villages around that kind of area. So yeah, not too far away. So a little bit of like local history. I quite like that in the
Oh,
garden.
I had no idea he was a musician. I just liked the color and it appealed to me. So got 10 varieties in them. I honestly can't remember which ones, but standard ones like Big Blue, which is a Spencer sweet pea with a very, very long stem. Alan Titchmarsh, it's another really, really good quality Spencer sweet pea, perfect for cutting. I confess that I'm a little bit of a there's no way of putting it. I'm a little bit of an elitist when it comes to sweet peas. If they haven't got stems for sort of 12 or 15, 18 inches for me, I don't pick them. I cut the heads off them and let them fall on the floor. I'm terrible.
Yeah, you're
But
quite
I mean, I
right.
do,
It looks so
do
nice
love
though.
sweet peas. I mean, literally, and I get Mark absolutely adores them. I really would like to get some more into my flower press this year. I missed the boat a little bit with them last year, and did manage to get a few into the flower press very late in the season. But then was very disappointed when I opened the flower press to realise I'd only pressed white ones. So
Oh,
they're really quite boring. As far as when it comes to displaying them, there's obviously no color to them. So yeah, I would like to get a lot more in the press. But I think 10 varieties this year. With me, they're always very, very pale pink, and I love the violet blues and the very, very soft. Always the pastels, always the very, very soft colours for me.
yeah, that sounds good, really good. Yeah, I like that. I like just all kind of similar and just I have some hot colours. That tends to be like we have like a wee cute village show and it's kind of like into the autumn, late summer, sort of early autumn time. So I usually do like more orangey kind of flowers. So I have like one raised bed that's like kind of more like oranges and that kind of thing. So that's usually for the village show.
Hmm. Lovely.
So we will see. We'll see how that goes this year. It wasn't too bad last year. Got quite a lot of good results, but can always be better. So that'll be the plan for this year to try and improve.
Well, I've always shied away from showing anything. Uh, I like to think I grow exhibition quality, and I do grow exhibition quality sweet peas and dahlias, but I've always shied away from actually showing them, and I've always meant to. There's a really very old horticultural show, literally just 2 miles down the road. That's been running for 135, 136 years, and I've always meant to take stuff, but I just know that I get so hyper fixated on stuff, and Mark knows that I'm not sure I can say this word anymore, but I get really psycho about it. I get really far too involved and far too competitive. So I've always stayed away just in case I turn into sort of Flowerzilla or something, and yeah, and throw a strop
No,
and end up
yeah.
embarrassing myself in public.
Ours is it's not like, a lot of the shows, they have the standards, it has to be exactly like this and, quite strict. Ours is a little bit like more informal. So
Hmm.
you can turn up to like your posy in a jam jar and, nobody
No,
really
it
says
sounds
anything. That's what I
sounds
quite like about
perfect.
it. It's not
Yeah,
too
well,
elite. It's very old school, I
needs to
like
be
it.
it needs to be accessible, doesn't it, and doable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's exactly it, I think, anyway. But no,
and
yeah, it's good fun.
when is that? You said is that August? You said
It's usually like it's mid to late August. I can't remember exactly when it is this year, but it's usually around like the 19th to 20th or something like that.
yeah.
So we'll be waiting for that schedule to drop through the door shortly, and then I'll be making my master plan for village domination.
But which ones you're gonna which categories you're gonna enter?
Yeah, I
Now
did
you
get a
mentioned
trophy one year, but wasn't many entries, so I don't know.
it's still a trophy, it's still a win.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about a blog that you write called Moss and Magic. Where can people catch up with that one?
Yes, that is on Substack, so that's it. It's quite new, and I'm not going to say I'm going to do it every month or every 2 weeks because that's just not how my life is. It's a bit more sporadic. It tends to be a bit more pagan orientated, wheel of the year, a bit more about like my kind of things that I get up to, gardening related, but also kind of like other things around that. It was just I guess I kind of describe myself. I'm very busy. I'm always busy. I'm a mum. I've got puppy, and I never have much time. So everything I do is like short bursts, really quick, and it's just trying to show people you don't have to do things perfectly. You can be a lazy pagan. You don't have to have these big elaborate setups to celebrate like all the different Sabbaths. And you don't need to have all this expensive stuff. And you can just bring magic into your life every day, and just little things just to make things better and brighter and improve your life. And I'm not perfect at anything, being a pagan, being a gardener, but it's just hopefully people will read it and maybe they'll resonate with something. They'll see a bit of themselves in that. So it's just really to try and share a bit more of like the real me is everywhere. It's on my Instagram, it's in my blog, but this is a little bit less curated and a bit more just, this is me, this is what I get up to.
Oh,
That
perfect.
makes any sense.
Yeah. And I've also noticed from my in-depth Instagram stalking today that I mean, I knew this happened, but I'm going to have to ask you about it. You've met Adam Frost,
Yes, I did. Yeah,
yeah?
BBC Gardeners World. We had
And
like a
and
preview day. I was
is
at
he as
that.
tall as I think he is?
He's quite. I'm very small for size reference, but he is quite tall.
Because whenever I see him on the telly, he almost looks like he's got sort of enormous sort of foam hands, like like in America at the Super Bowl games, everybody got foam
Yeah.
hands. He always looks like he's got comedy hands on, and I'm not sure if that's true. I mean, obviously I've never met him myself, but I just thought I'd ask because I did see the
No,
picture of you,
he
and
is
I
quite
just
tall, and he's quite slender as well. I think, and the way that he stands, he sort of stands like sort of a little bit to the side. And he is quite a tall man, yeah. But he's lovely. He's really nice. He's probably going to run if he ever sees me ever again, because I just talked his ear off about his garden, which was really inspiring. But yeah, I think he'd pretend not to see me. He bumps into me
I'm
again
sure
at
he
a
gets
show.
it all the time. I mean, I'm not on Adam's Frost level. I'm no celebrity gardener, but when people meet me in public, I can rest assured that they talk at me an awful lot about what they.
I bet you're
So
just signing autographs and getting chased down the road.
Well, I've had a couple of bizarre experiences in my time, I must admit. Yeah, recognised in some very strange places as well. I was recognised on a flight to Boston, which was particularly weird. And I was also whilst on that trip to America, I was also recognised in a bar in Manchester, Massachusetts, which was also equally
Wow,
strange.
that's crazy.
It's like, yeah,
Local,
why am I
local
on the other
train.
side of the world and people know who I am? But I walk down the high street in Fordingbridge where we live and nobody bats an eyelid. So yeah, it was a bit strange.
That's good though. That's good. That's nice though that people will know you and appreciate what you do and things to to stop and speak. I think that's really lovely.
Do
It
you
kind
know
of
what?
shows how people
It
relate.
really, yeah, it really does make it worthwhile because obviously someone like me produces a huge amount of content, and obviously a lot of people these days consume a huge amount of content and never really sort of interact with it. So, yeah, I'm trying to get more. I'm trying to pay more attention to myself recently to the few very positive comments I get, and I do get some really nice inbox messages and some comments about how I've shaped people's gardens and how the story I sometimes share has touched their lives or resonated with them, or a lifestyle that I may have actually sort of said, "Oh, we do this," and it's all that's really lovely. And I'm trying to take those little bits of joy because obviously a lot of the time you pump content out into the world and it either seems to miss. Nobody seems to see it, or it gets overtaken by an awful lot of the noise that's out there. And sometimes, yeah, just trying to be a little bit more mindful and tune into not focus on the numbers about how many people you're talking, but speak to quality people, have quality interactions and quality conversations with people, and actually take something away from them. And it's nice when people message and say, "Oh, that was really nice. I really enjoyed that." So, yeah, I'm trying to listen to those a little more and turn down the noise, if you see what I mean, because there's a lot of
Yeah. No,
static.
that's true. There's a lot of distraction. I was reading the book the other day and it had a nice quote in it and it said, speak to the people who can hear you. And I thought
Yes.
that's it's true. Like my content, I'm not a professional gardener. I don't maybe do things the proper way all of the time. So I'm not going to be somebody that people will follow and look to for like, professional, like, totally sensible advice. But what I am hoping to achieve is, people like me who are super busy, they've never washed a pot in their entire life. So, they've only got 10 minutes before, the dog wants to let out or the baby starts crying or, whatever it is, they've got demands on their time. That's, I guess, what I'm trying to find and, to can bring together is people like me who maybe didn't think they were good enough or didn't think they had anything to share that people would want to hear and just say, you know what, things do work out if it's not perfect. If you don't have, all your different kinds of pot and mix and your spotlessly clean pots, it will probably work out and it'll probably be okay.
But I don't wash my pots either. I'll put that out there. So,
I
pe-
just don't have time.
I'm prepared to take the flat. I'm prepared to take the heat and the flat for that. So yeah, yeah, get in my inbox if you don't like it. But no, I don't wash my pots. Again, I've got too much to blooming do. To be honest with you, I've got better things to do with my time.
And it's boring. It's one of these jobs along like with ironing, which I binned off about 20 years ago. That I'm just like, life is too short. What do I want to spend my life doing? It's not washing pots. It's not ironing. So
I
I'm not
barely
going to
get
do
to
either. Hit my
barely get
40s,
time
ready
to
to buy
wash
it.
me clothes, let alone wash me plant pots.
No,
Yeah.
baby wipes. Tell ya, game changer.
Another really lovely little snippet I picked up from your Instagram channel was the Rowan berry jelly, which is not easy to say. I had to really concentrate on that one.
No, it's
What
a
did-
tongue
what
teaser.
what was it like?
It's all right. It's quite tart, but I made it because I really like quince jelly to go with cheese. But it can be
Yes.
a bit sweet, and it's really hard to find like a good quince jelly here. So as a sub for that, I think it's pretty good. It's really
If
nice
I ever
with
come across a
brie,
jar, I'll
which
send
is
it
quite
to you because
sweet and tangy.
people are always giving me quince jelly, and I absolutely detest
I
it.
love that. Oh, so good. I could just eat it with a big spoon. It's so good. But yeah, it's kind of hard to kind of get your hands on a decent one here. We got one at Sainsbury's at Christmas that it wasn't awesome. It was just like jam. But
Okay.
I really like it. So I thought as an alternative to that, I made it and it was nice, but it was quite a laborious process. It kind of reminded me of the time I made hedgerow gin with like hawthorn berries. I'm never ever ever going to do that again. Oh, it took so long to get them prepped and done. But I might make the jelly again. But yeah, I think I would need a year off to forget like the whole process and the mess that I made in our kitchen. There's probably still some on the ceiling from squeezing it through the jelly bag.
Okay. So it was quite. I mean, I'm assuming like a rose hip jelly that it was packed full of vitamin C and antioxidants and really, really. I can imagine it being incredibly good for you.
Yeah, I think so because it's a major food source for the birds here, and it's another plant that's got like sort of magical qualities, like it's meant to be protective, and a lot of the things that have these like magical qualities, it's actually got a basis in fact, so it will be like that it's healthy for you, or there'll be an actual physical reason, not
So
just kind of like mythology.
I'm a little confused, Karen, because isn't it? I thought you always planted a rowan tree to keep the witches away. Is that true?
Well, this is that. Yeah, it is, but I live here, so I'm not sure that hasn't
I'm
worked
just,
here.
gonna- I'm just going to say, I'm sure you've referred to yourself as a witch
Yeah,
on several occasions.
green rich. Yeah, but I've got that, and I've got really big holly trees around our garden as well. That's another one that's in folklore, was that it would interrupt the witches from running round to like your
Okay.
garden, and they wouldn't be able to get in. But I don't know if that means different witches, but
Well, it depends.
I don't know.
It might just make you a hermit witch. It might just keep you actually in your own
Yeah,
garden and not let you escape your own property. That sounds like a very good idea to
like a
me.
magical circle. That sounds awesome. I'm going to go ahead and plant more rowan trees.
Because again, going back to the gentleman Roger, that really got me interested in gardening at a young age. They had an enormously huge rowan tree at the bottom and in the bottom left-hand corner of their garden. I mean, it was a thumping great big thing. And again, the blackbirds and the pigeons and the crows were just literally as soon as they turned bright red. As soon as the leaves dropped and it was just the berries, the birds would descend upon it and literally just they spend weeks up there just feasting on them. So yeah, they are. Yeah, very, very pretty. Again, you don't see very many Rowans about. Not that, certainly not down here anymore, I must admit.
No, you don't really. We've got ours are two different colours as well, which I didn't realise that you got until we moved here. We've got one that's like your sort of traditional reddy orange, and we have more like a yellow toned
Hmm.
berried one,
Yeah.
which I had not ever seen before. So that's really nice, and that is where I've got my lattice ending rose that you recommended. That I absolutely love. It's kind of in between those two. So you've got the kind of orangey tones and the yellow, and then you've got this beautiful glowing sort of would you call it a peachy kind of orange like
Yeah,
glowing, and as you pointed out, the sun comes through and it just looks so lovely.
nice. Yeah, I planted a white one with white berries for a client a little while ago. It's still a very small tree. I mean, it's had a couple of clusters of berries on it, but I did plant. I can't remember the variety on that one, but I did plant a one with white berries. They were sort of like a suppose you call them a sort of a minty, sort of very, very light apple green color. They were quite pretty though.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it sounds lovely. I like the kind of more unusual kind of colourings, but it's really pretty, but they are absolutely massive. I was kind of concerned about them in the big storm that we just had, but they survived okay, so they are like still standing and didn't hit the house or anything, so that was
Yeah,
positive.
because you had some horrific weather, didn't you? You had trees down and all sorts up there.
Oh, it was really, really bad. It's sad. It's sad to see the impact on the forests, and it was the schools were shut here, and we had no electricity for It was more than a day. It was about 27 hours or something like that. Bottom end of the village, they were nearly 3 days. They didn't have any power, so it was pretty bad. No flooding this time. I think that they finally kind of fixed that issue because we used to get really bad flooding, and it would be over the top of your wellies. It would be so deep, but
Hmm.
not so much now. We do get snowed in here as well, so we usually have to get dug up by the snow plows to get us out. But I like that. I don't mind it too much if you're well organised and you've got everything in that you need. There's worse things, and we're lucky enough to have the wood burner for heat and be able to heat hot drinks and heat the house and things. But yeah, it was a little bit scary for a while. I was a bit concerned about our big tree, but it all survived intact, so it was okay. No damage here personally, but I really feel for everybody that was more affected.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah, I said it was widespread. We survived very well down here. We've obviously had is it two or maybe three named storms this year, but they're luckily for us, but most of us hit us at the house from the southwest, which we're actually really hunkered down on. We've got a huge thuya tree on that boundary, and there's two houses behind us. I'm pointing like everybody can see, but I'm not. I'm pointing. I'm waving my arms
I do
around,
that.
but
Nobody can
there's
see. oh
It's,
no.
it's two really large houses over there, and they tend to break most of the wind before it hits us, and it kind of funnels down the side of the cottage and doesn't damage the fences. So we're quite lucky on that respect. But if it swings round and hits us from the northeast, that's when I get a bit, oh yeah, that's not very nice. I don't like that very much. But luckily this time it came us at us from the southwest again. So, but yeah. Are you
Yeah.
also, I need to know, I need to know, is your tortoise asleep right now, or is he awake?
He's pretty sleepy. It's kind of he's semi hibernates. Like I think they call it brumating. So I don't. They used to, Blue Peter style, stick them in the freezer or the fridge or whatever it is over winter. But that's not really considered that safe anymore. So they kind of wind down. So he's not really eating so much, and he sleeps most of the time. So he wakes up sort of every 2 or 3 weeks, and he'll have like a good feed. And we get him up once a week, and he has like a bath, like a soak, and he takes water in through his like the skin in his neck,
Yeah,
keeps him hydrated, and usually like it's a horrible subject, but that's when he goes to the toilet.
yeah.
And then the rest of the time he just sleeps. So I'm not too sure what the dog's going to make of him when he wakes back up. Because quite noisy, he marches about and scratches and climbs about in his cage. And I think the dog's going to be quite keen to investigate. He's already tried to kind of, have a wee chomp at him as I've been going past with him to put him in the bath. So that'll be interesting. Very
Oh,
fast though. Don't let anybody ever tell you tortoises are slow because they are not. You put them down, they'll be gone when you look back.
well, a friend of ours actually lost her tortoise twice because of
Yeah, I
that.
can imagine. It's
Yeah,
speedy, so
it,
speedy.
down here on the south coast. I mean, I can't. I think I have off the top of my head. I think the tortoise is called Kate or Katie. And
Oh,
Mark worked with this particular lady, and she was absolutely mortified. Came in one day, the tortoise had escaped. It had got out of its sort of pen in the garden. It had a sort of a metal plate, not a playpen, but you know what I mean. You pop them in the pen to so they can have some grass,
yeah.
and it had managed to knock its way out of that and had disappeared. And she
Oh,
thought it
yeah.
had gone underneath a fence panel, escaped into next door's garden, and then. As far as they were concerned, the tortoise was long gone, completely long gone, until the following spring when the tortoise marched back into their garden. It had actually hibernated underneath a bush and literally had woken up
Mm.
the next spring and thought, oh, okay, well, there,
Just swim
I used to
itself
live
out.
over there, and sort of there she was again, and then literally about 6 months later, disappeared again.
You wonder how they manage. We use an old raised bed like over the grass for Dorian to go in because he did the same. We got like a playpen to put him in, and he just like went right through the middle of it like Jurassic Park style and just like steamrollered right through. So that
on
didn't
his,
work.
on his way to some
Yeah,
fresh grass or some lettuce somewhere.
yeah, or to eat things. He ate all of my marigolds for the show one year, so obviously I didn't place in that with my green stalks because he bit all the flower heads off.
Again, this will make you chuckle. This particular tortoise, the second time it disappeared, actually turned back up. Actually turned up at a vet's, and I'm not sure entirely sure I've got this. Please don't quote me on this, but I'm not sure I've got the story completely correct. But she went. The owner of the tortoise, it was data chipped. Is it data chipped? Is that the right word? Anyway,
I
it was
think so.
chipped.
Yeah, like a
Yeah,
chapter.
it just did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was chipped. So of course they scanned the tortoise. Someone took it in there, and then someone said, "Well, it's my tortoise." And they said, and anyway, they said, "Well, you can't take her away because the tortoise is registered to somebody else." Sort of held on to it anyway. Phoned the owner, and then she had to go into this battle with this person that had taken this tortoise in for this health check that to try and prove to the vet that it actually they're not stolen it, but they obviously had found it somewhere. And obviously being quite a
Mm.
size, it was obviously quite valuable. And yeah, she had to take pictures, and she said, "Look, I grew up with this tortoise." I had to take pictures of her holding the tortoise, and they looked at the shell markings to make sure it was a match. And yeah, it was quite some kerfuffle before they actually managed to get the tortoise back the second time. But yeah, that one's done a runner on 2 occasions.
Would be to take more pictures of Dorian. Most of the pictures I've got of him, he's wearing these Stegosaurus jumpers, so maybe to take some
Yeah,
normal tortoise pictures.
you must take some pictures of his shell and give him a measure so you have a record of him. The other thing that I saw on Instagram and which I really loved was you making homemade organic plant fertilizers. Is that something you do regularly
Yeah.
or something you just did for a post?
I, no, I do it because I like. I like to make my own things. I like to try and keep things like quite natural. I don't use any sort of chemicals in the garden. I don't use any kind of weed killers or anything like that. So I like to
Hmm.
try and make the most of what we've got. But I always do have to, like, before I use them, have to look up which is which, because I do get confused to which feed is good for which plant. Because as you know much better than me, like, some things are better for different purposes.
Yeah.
But no, I've always got, like, banana tea, nettle tea, comfy tea on the go, and I also use have a bokashi bin. It's like a type of composting, which is like, excludes the oxygen. You get fluid from that, which it's not got much nutrient value, but it does increase I think it's the bioavailability, a long
Hmm.
word for this type of thing, of the soil. So I use that watered down as well. I quite like, just, it's a money saving thing, and it's also like, trying to keep things natural and do, like, make use of what you've got. And I grow comfy really for that reason, because I like the look of it, but then it's also got that kind of good benefit to the soil. And if you dig it in or if you use it as a fertilizer, so I
Yeah,
quite like things that work hard.
it's a nitrogen fixing plant, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
got long
high in
tap
nitrogen.
roots, and
I must
yeah,
admit,
so
I've
it's quite
got
it's quite
quite a lot of it
handy.
in the garden here. It can be a little bit of a nuisance. I mean, getting it out I mean, the tap roots on it are enormous, aren't they?
Yeah, they're really, really long. Our soil here is not fantastic, despite the fact that we try and keep building it up with sort of, mulching and things like that. So we don't tend to have, like, a lot of people will say, oh, that plant's really invasive. They wouldn't be here. They would struggle to get things established. So we're quite
Just
lucky.
because
It
of the
just
weather
kind of stays
conditions, it
like
being so exposed.
put where it is. Yeah, so it's a bit. If it hangs on here, then I think it probably, if it goes okay, it can go in anyone's garden. I would say pretty much, because it is very cold. It's very windy. The soil is not the best. So it's probably, yeah. If you can see it in my garden, chances are you can definitely grow it in yours.
I'm feeling very much like a southern softie now, as the phrase would be. That my soil down here is probably, I don't know, 24 inches deep of lovely, beautiful, crumbly loam. It's just stunning, and we're all tucked away from the wind, and we get sun all day, every day, and
Oh, oh, don't! I'll be down with my wee suitcase and that lovely spare room that you post,
and I
getting
moan
my
if the temperature.
cocktails and my
I
roast.
mean, I've moaned a little bit today. I mean, obviously, there's reasons why I've moaned, but I've lost. Obviously, you've probably noticed I've lost quite a lot of weight, and I must admit that I'm
Yeah, I'm
really
wondering as
feeling
well.
the cold, not like I've ever felt before.
So
So
cold.
today
No,
was
it's a
about
problem.
between 5 and 6 degrees here, so it wasn't by any means proper cold. I mean, it wasn't freezing, but I've spent the day in a hat and a snood and 5 layers, and still walked in the garden and being out working, thinking, "Oh goodness me, it's absolutely blooming raw." But that thing, it's just mainly because I've lost heading for 70 pounds in weight, so I'm obviously about a
Oh,
third of the
bloody
man I
hell.
actually was about a year ago. So I think it's just me feeling the
Oh,
cold and
see,
getting
notice
older.
the difference. Do you know what is actually really good for, like, how cold you feel? It sounds absolutely bonkers. I feel the cold really, really bad. I started cold plunging in my garden. I've got like a
Yes, I
little,
saw.
it's
That's
like a
mental.
pod. It was the day I decided to start. I hadn't really done it before, apart from sea swimming. It was air temp was, I think, 4 or 5 degrees, and the water was like -1 the first time I did it. Now it's a positively balmy 1 degree, and it's actually making me feel less cold the rest of the time in comparison.
I know the health benefits are extraordinary for circulation and the removal of sort of toxins and inflammation around
Yeah,
the
it's really
joints and your
good.
heart and but I wish I could bring myself to do it, but no part of me wants to. I prefer a very warm bath and spend quite a lot of time. Do you know what? I do most of my best Instagramming work in the bath. That probably is going to put off a huge amount of my audience now, but I do the best quality work whilst soaking in the bath.
Oh, that sounds so good. We've only got one bath in this house. That's in my daughter's bathroom, but she's not the tidiest, and I am. So I would probably need to spend a good hour in there, like, making it how I would want it to be to relax. So, I would love a nice bath and a tidy bathroom. That would be really good.
Well, we rank the bath in this house as the third best thing we've ever done. We put a huge bath into this, and it looks like a water tank. I mean, it's normal white bath. It doesn't look like a water tank, but it's like a cattle trough. It's very square edged and yeah, very deep. And it's huge. Yeah, so it ranks the third best thing, a lot behind getting married and actually getting the dog. Those are number one and number two. You can place those wherever you want. Getting the dog is actually number one. But yeah, the bath ranks as
Yes,
the
I was
third
going
best
to
thing we've
say
ever
that.
done.
My dog would be number one.
Mark
I
knows
think
full
you're
well
very
that
kind. I put the dog number one.
I'm not being shady to Mark, but he knows the dog's a complete love of my life. I mean, it's just,
But you know what, with dogs though, it's like they're never mad. They're always like happy to see you. It doesn't really matter what you do or what you say. They just think you're amazing. I think that is like
yeah.
a really
I think
special
they.
thing with dogs.
I think your dog will always see the best bits of you that you forget. I think that's the best way of looking at it. They see all the love and the joy and the excitement and all the parts of your character. I think every human beings ignore, but your dog will see them and your dog will appreciate them.
Oh, it's lovely. We had an amusing conversation at the tea table today. My husband said, "Oh," he said, "I was very much enjoying hearing your rendition of King of the Wolves." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm so embarrassed because I sing to the dog and I make up these like silly songs." So I have a big, three verses of the King of the Wolves. He's the King of the Wolves. My husband was listening the whole time. Very embarrassing.
Dear. I think on that note, I think we probably better wrap up today's conversation. I think we're descending into utter madness. Thank you so much, Karen. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I say it's really really lovely to finally actually speak to you in person after conversing with you for probably I don't know 5 or 6 years online. So thank you
Oh,
so
it's a
much for
long
giving up
time.
your time and telling us all about your account and what it is you're getting up to in the garden. So yeah, that's great.
Oh,
Thank
that's
you
my
very much.
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'll talk to you very soon.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye. I really hope that you enjoyed my casual conversation with Karen and that you'll consider heading across to Instagram and take a look at her lovely account. You can find her on Instagram using the handle Rake Expectations, and of course there's a couple of blogs for you to catch up there too. Next week I'll be back with episode 5 and yet another gardener joining me from Scotland. I hope that you manage to get some time in your garden over the coming week. Until then, take care and happy gardening.